Hello, welcome to another episode of Sports with Monga. Well, it's ended the way we expected it to end, right? Max Verstappen is a man on a roll right now. Nothing at this moment is able to kind of phase him, and he's on a form of his lifetime. It was an exciting race. Why do I write exciting sprint race? Because it was exciting. It was pretty interesting. So this is how it's happened. Before the race starts, we get a message from the FIA that they're going to delay the start. It's going to be first they were like they're going to do a standing start, a rolling start, but then they say, okay, now it's a rolling start behind the safety car. Originally it was supposed to be 15 laps of racing, but then of course, all cars have been fueled up for the 15 laps of racing. But this is the after the rain kind of comes in, if I kind of holds it off, waits for the rain to kind of die a bit, and it kind of stops. The rain stops, the sun comes out for an hour, because then the rains were supposed to kind of come. That's what the forecast was looking at. But then that's what kind of gave the opportunity as well here for others to think about, like, okay, what's the strategy, how will this play, and so on and so forth. So what really happens is there are 4 laps behind the safety car. They were like, okay, it'll be behind the safety car starts, and then you have a formation lap. The formation lap got over the first lap, second lap, third. So they were like, okay, now 4 laps behind the safety car are part of formation laps, and then it'll be a safety car in and a rolling start. So then default or de facto Max Verstappen becomes the safety, becomes the starting point, basically. When he goes, everybody goes. And it quickly, it was pretty interesting to say, like, it was almost going dry very quickly, because you don't understand, the track temperature was not that high. The track temperature was around 27, 28, so it was not low. It was not 15, so it was not drying up that quickly. It was majorly the fact that there was a lot of wind coming in, which was because of the race and because of the rain. The water that is thrown up by these cars is still standing on top of the track. It's not moving away. So it's like, if the wind isn't blowing heavily, if the track will drive faster. That was the whole idea, but then that didn't happen. So FIA, of course, is a great call for them, I would say. Like, they've messed up a lot of calls, but this was a good call, and safety was important. We've had an accident, Antoine Hubert, and we've had one more accident this year in the same Spa-Francorchamps, in the F2 or an F3 race. And that's not what we want as Formula One fans, to kind of keep hearing that this is dangerous. It's a dangerous sport. Everybody knows, like, Halo is protecting a lot of people. Jogan, you should be happy to a Halo, otherwise, and Max Verstappen maybe. So these are things that we've realized. But then it was nice that it was a delayed start. It was 35 minutes delayed. The track was kind of drying up after it started the 4 formation laps, and George Russell comes in, and basically it will be pretty quickly to slicks, or like to inters. Right now we are ready for inters. Everybody's on the wet tire, but then that's the problem, and that's when it got interesting. Like, who at the time of the safety car gone in will go in the in the pit, and to kind of get the intermediates. And we saw a lot of it. Also, half the grid, right? Half the grid went in, and half the grid didn't. So who went in? Well, we all expected Max Verstappen to kind of jump into the pit, but then he did not. So Max did not. Carlos Sainz did not. Charles Leclerc did not. Pierre Gasly did. So, and it exchanged a lot of hands. So what eventually happens, like, you'll half the grid who were on inters, and the half the grid who were on full wets. But of course, everybody knew that the next lap is when everybody's going to pit in, like the ones that did not pit in the first batch. I think it was a rule. I think it's a rule or something that was kind of, because if you double stack, if you have 20 cars coming in the pit box or pit lane, it is extremely chaotic, and it's race. It's not, you're not doing practice that, okay, it's going to be full on mode. You're going to have a car coming in when your car is getting down with tires, and you might be impeding anybody, or you might kind of have a crash in the in the pit lane and stuff and so on. And that's penalty, and that's really, you don't want to damage cars and stuff and so on. So it was a little weird. to kind of but then the benefits were like it tumbled the order. Of course, it changed the order. The biggest beneficiaries were the Alpines. Pierre Gasly definitely now in the fray. He was almost he was immediately top, if I'm not wrong. He was P2 at one point. He was P3 at one point, and that's what he said, and that's where he finished as well. He finished Alpine. He had a good positive move, and but then what was got interesting was like Max Verstappen had pitted. Max Verstappen came behind Oscar Piastri with a 1.5 second gap. Now, at the 1.5 second, that was the interesting part. Like, how will this because you cannot in the pit lane do an unsafe release. Like, what does an unsafe release mean? You cannot put the car if your car pit boxes and then you're changing the tires, you cannot release the front jack for the car to be away to move away if there are cars still coming in the pit lane. So you have to judge it like a very split second, like, okay, you have enough space, move, and then jack drops and then the car moves. And that's the interesting part, and that's the operational thing that we don't see in a lot of races. And this race got this because it was a sprint race. It was just like 11 lap race, and then everybody wanted to kind of see what they can do, and that was very interesting. Like, I really like the fact that we could actually see the dynamics of like the losers, and it's a lucky draw. It's not something you can control, right? If a car behind is taking more time and you make a call and you just slot it in without the other person to brake hard, it's a safe release. It's a safe release. Ferraris got caught out. McLaren got really lucky on that one. In the first one, Piastri was off. Like, it was off. I think he got a really good stop. Max had a little slow stop. He got a 3.3 in my opinion. The jack was still on because I think there were cars still coming in. But that's what it got interesting. Like, you could see like Max is still kind of coming out of the pit, but then Oscar moves ahead and he's out in the lead, and 1.4 seconds is a good lead. And then you could see that like Max is like pushing. Like, now he's on the Inter, so he's on this because McLaren still has the extra downforce with the package that they're running. But then Max, he's just kind of on it. He's kind of getting on him. He's trying to get the best out of them, and that's the best of the car that he has. And he's so calm with it, and it's like, and at one point it was like, I think it was 0.4 seconds, that was the gap, and that's when things kind of changed again, you can say, because Fernando Alonso, it never happens, but then after his birthday, he's crashed. He crashed into the no-name corner, the same corner that Mr. Stroll crashed earlier in the qualifying. The sprint qualifying. I think that's pretty interesting. That kind of changes the order as well, like, because then the safety car came in, then everybody stacked behind each other, and then that Max Verstappen is just going to send it, like full send it. But that was kind of the order. That was pretty interesting. So we had Max Verstappen. So Oscar Piastri was leading, Max behind him. Then we had Pierre Gasly. We had Lewis Hamilton. We had Perez, and like everybody's like was there. But then when the race restarts, the Mercedes has so much traction. Just want to move to that point. Like, Mercedes has so much traction that what does that mean? That they can turn the car and they can hold the car, the balance of the car at the right point, so that they can move the car, and it operates the way the driver wants it to operate, and that's a very important it's an important thing to have. And I felt that the rest of the cars around Mercedes were all struggling. For the fact Sergio Perez, after the safety car restart, was in a lot of pressure. He was running P4 at one point. He was putting some pressure on Gasly, but then Hamilton was right behind him, and Hamilton was like on top of his on his tail every time, and they touched that there was a damage at a straight with Hamilton kind of running into a Perez, which apparently has had a big damage on his side pod, which basically made his side pod, which broke his side pod. And when the side pod broke, it was basically his race was done. He was tumbling down the order like dominoes. Like, it was like, I was like, what was happening? Like, how is Williams getting ahead of Perez here? And he then went off and so on. So then they had to retire the car. So Perez, we could do a separate discussion on, like, he's not doing himself a favor. He can't finish. Like, he has to be in the top 3 to top 2 all the time. If he is not doing that regularly, what is that second seat doing? Yeah, he needs a good summer break. I think Perez needs a good. Let's see how the race goes tomorrow, because we still have the race for tomorrow. This is just the sprint part. But then yeah, Hamilton then was handed a 5-second time penalty. He finished P4, but then after the penalty was applied, he finished P7. That puts Carlos Sainz P4. Ferrari had a good. They were struggling with the sprint. I don't think they had the tires switched on ever, but then they were both kind of tumbling along without kind of crashing or like keeping the car on the road. That was the most important thing, I think, because with the situation and with the temperatures and the weather. Lando Norris, he finished P6. As I said, Hamilton finished P7. George Russell finished P8, and that was kind of what I didn't like. He was Ricciardo at the end of it was one final lap, and then you could see that Ricciardo was struggling with his tires. Of course, at the end of the 11th lap, Inters were fried. Inters are supposed to work in the best condition is from a wet track to a drying track, but now the track it's completely dry. It's bone dry. You have a racing line. Everything is dry. The temperatures are really kind of up. The pressures, because what happens is when the tire has a lot of temperature, the pressure inside builds up. When it builds up, it feels that you're still it loses a lot of grip, and you don't have a lot of grips. And there are a lot of kind of 90-degree corners at this track at the Belgian Grand Prix, that at the Spa-Francorchamps, that you can't. There are flat out corners, but then there are certain before the start finish line. There are 2 corners which are 90 degrees, and you need the car to stick to have grip to kind of move around. But then I think Ricciardo lost a lot of time and a lot of grip there. Because he was easily picked up by first George Russell, who got P8, but then at the end I think he also got picked up by Ocon, who finished P9, and Ricciardo finished P10, way ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. And I think Yuki had a damage or something. He had an issue. He finished P18. Lance Stroll was next. I think there are no points. The points are given from P1 to P8, like the 8th position from 1st to 8th. Everybody gets the first one gets 8 points, and the 8th one gets 1 point. That's how the order is. So there's a lot more to talk about in the bottom. But then I feel like Oscar Piastri led how do you want to, he was confused when he was in post sprint race conference, like the press conference. He was like, what am I supposed to call this? Is this the race? Did I win a race? Was I leading? This is the podium. What should I call it? You get a medal, and you get a medal, and you get a you don't get a trophy. You get a medal after winning the but you get points. That's more important. So it's good to see that Oscar Piastri has kind of come of age, not come of age, but then his talent is now showing what we already knew, that he's an amazing driver. He's been everything. He's won F2, F3, all championships in the junior categories. He's a really, really hard nut. But then Max Verstappen could say that he is struggling with his tires. And then he knew he would just had to pick him off, and he did simply. And then Oscar did a good job. He didn't go tumbling down the order. He maintained his position. He finished P2. He finished second, and that's the important thing. I think but tomorrow is the race, and we'll be doing another video, a reaction video of a review video of the Belgian Grand Prix tomorrow. The interesting thing is Max does not start from pole. It's Charles Leclerc who starts from pole. Max starts 6th tomorrow, and that's what is interesting. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about Oscar Piastri's drive today? Would have been amazing if both the Australians scored points, but I'm really happy for Piastri. Lando, yeah, could have, should have. It was a very weird, but it was exciting race. I would say it was a really, really exciting race. It was the wait that we had kind of eventually. I think everybody was happy that they waited, and the sensible part was to wait, kind of let the rain go away, and then let's just race more safely. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? About anything that you want to talk about, any incident that you really liked about, and then I will catch you in the next one. See ya.